And when we experience pleasure, one of the molecules in the brain that gets released in a dedicated neural circuit of the brain called the reward pathway is dopamine. And the more dopamine that's released and the faster that it's released in the reward pathway in response to any stimulus, internal, external, a substance, a behavior, the more likely that substance or behavior is to be positive, reinforcing, or just something that our brains recognize as necessary for survival that we need to approach, explore, and possibly do again. So dopamine has become a kind of common currency for measuring the addictive potential of different substances and behaviors. And also we know that what happens in the brain as people get addicted is that this dopamine release mechanism goes awry in a very kind of predictable way.
So I've been thinking about this over the last couple of days, especially because I just came from a dance weekend and I do Scottish country dancing. I love it, but I get so much dopamine from this behavior. I get such a rush from it and such a high, and I'm having so much joy that sometimes then I'm experiencing the other side of the teeter-totter, and that's pretty natural, I guess, then on the Monday and the Tuesday after something like that.
Yeah, that's a nice example because we don't usually think of there being a hangover or a come down from being in a show or performing. But in fact, very often people will describe that. I remember I was doing a podcast with Russell Brand, who's performed in front of very large live audiences. And he talked about how he would get a total rush from that and then a really hard come down, and then actually would use drugs like cocaine to sort of bring himself back up again. And that's quite common. And getting back to that teeter-totter, to understand, what's happening there, there are certain rules governing this teeter-totter balance, and the first and most important rule is that the balance wants to remain level with the ground, or what neuroscientists call homeostasis, such that with any deviation from neutrality, whether to the side of pleasure or pain, our brains are going to work very hard to restore a level balance. The way our brains do that is first by tilting an equal and opposite amount to whatever the initial stimulus is. So if we do something that's pleasurable, reinforcing, that releases dopamine in the reward pathway, the balance tilts to the side of pleasure, but then our brain adapts by down-regulating dopamine transmission. I like to imagine that as these little neuroadaptation gremlins hopping on the pain side of the balance to bring it level again, but they like it on the balance, so they don't get off on its level. They stay on until we're tilted an equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. And that is the hangover, the come down, the blue Monday, or when you get back from a weekend of Scottish dancing, you're like, what is the meaning of my life? Why do I do what I do? Or whatever, kind of like the negative ruminations. Now, if we wait long enough without re-exposing ourselves to whatever our pleasurable reward is, then those gremlins get the message that their job is done. They hop off and homeostasis is restored.